All right. Today let's circle back on that. A tribute to everything we've ever said we'd do later, but never will. We're going to explore the graveyard of follow-ups, backlog grooming sessions, ghost initiatives, all the ideas and action items and passion projects that quietly expired in the JIRA board. Because I guess sometimes saying we'll circle back on that really just kind of means like we'll let it die. And so today I have one of my favorite people in the whole universe, Brittany. She is a co-resident of this beautiful graveyard of things we're never going to do. Brittany, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Gabby. I'm Brittany Stewart. Nice to be on this revops or whatever podcast with you. My background is in technology consulting, operations, and just overall business efficiency. So you and I have worked together at a couple of different stops. Mostly around supporting organizations implement Salesforce and other SaaS applications, including HubSpot, what have you. And my background really is in supporting from an engagement side and also building teams to implement services around Salesforce and tech stacks and SaaS applications and all of that. So I know my way around the phrase, let's circle back for sure. Have lots of thoughts on this. So I'm excited to get started.
Is it a real thing, or is it just something we say when we kick the can until someone forgets?
So I'm really glad you said that, because I think that the phrase actually falls into a couple of different categories.
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So I think there's like the literal use of like, let's circle back, right? Because to take a step back, in consulting and service work in general, like there's only so many different phrases and ways that you can sort of say things to clients. It almost becomes kind of script-like, right? Like, and every client is special, but they're also not special. And so as a consultant, you then start to sort of have like a script of phrases that you use, and let's circle back is one of them. But so you got the literal use where like, yeah, like you actually do want to circle back to it. Like you don't have the space in the meeting to get to it. You don't have the right folks on it. And like, it is a literal, like, yeah, we should put a pin in this and come back to it, right? There's also the metaphorical, like, let's circle back to it. And I think that that's where we get more into the kick the can down the road kind of usage of it. And I think like that is where it's ripe in its usage to me, because there's so much subtext to that version of let's circle back. And there's like so much nuance, and those who are emotionally intelligent get it. Especially if you're on the call with someone and someone says it, like anytime I hear it, I'm like, okay, actually, how are they actually using this? What are we going to do about it? Right. And so I feel like depending on who you are in your role, you know how to play between the two. And I'd love your thoughts on that.
No, I completely agree with you. I think it's either a sort of it could be a deferring in the moment, right? Like, I'm not ready to have that conversation. It could literally be we just don't have the time. Like, put it in the parking lot. We can talk about the parking lot too. But it can also be like just a very polite funeral. Like, yeah, we're done with that one. Yeah, we'll come back to that. But you can definitely tell in like the tone, I think.
Totally. And there are different types of funerals, right? Like it's not always the same. So like one reason you could use that phrase is this is out of scope.
Yeah.
And we do not have the capacity or the energy or the resources or the money to even sort of go down that rabbit hole. So we're not going to entertain it. The other one is whoever, the let's circle back is directed at may not know what they're talking about.
That's true.
And we want to move them off of that because they're taking us in a direction that is not useful.
They need an adult to have that conversation. They need a chaperone.
Yeah, or like they're not the right person to have it. But they're, you know, there's always so much subtext, I feel like, in work conversations, because you can't just straight up say you don't know what you're talking about. But like, let's circle back is sort of a way to deploy and say that to someone. There's also, of course, the circle back season, right, as people like to call it, which is the time period between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where nobody's going to do anything with anything.
No.
Yeah.
People who do selling, they're the only people working. People who do sales, they're the only people working during that time. The rest of us are just trying to like survive.
Well, that's true, but I do feel like there's been instances where you and I have actually had a couple of
Oh, yes. No, sorry. I meant like in normal situations, because you and I have absolutely worked every hour of that circle back season. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the parking lot? So I brought up the parking lot. What is the parking lot? Do you think it's an actual thing, or is it just like the junk drawer? You open it, you take a look, you see what's in there, but then you just kind of like, I don't want to get into that and close it.
So I think it's both, and I think it depends both on the like team that's managing that parking lot and the client, right, or the customer who ultimately owns that parking lot, if you will. So like there's been many times in my experience as an engagement manager and a delivery director where I have said, like, let's put that in the parking lot. And I legitimately mean like, this is a really good idea and we should get back to it, but we've got to build some foundation pieces before we can even get to that, right? It's like people who want to add skylights to the roof of their house before they've even laid the cement, right, for the foundation, right? And so it's like, okay, well, no, like, let's put a pin in that and actually come back to it. But that's where it sometimes becomes the junk drawer, because you can't, in order for the parking lot to be effective, you can't just say, we're going to put it in the parking lot and that's the only way you engage with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it goes back to sort of like classic backlog management, that like parking lot is a euphemism for backlog. And if you're not revisiting that parking lot on a regular basis and sort of checking in, right? If you're not going through and sort of sorting through the junk drawer and be like, do we need this? Do we not? Right? Then it can be sort of become useless and sort of tucked away and never looked at. But I definitely enjoy when we're able to go back to it and see sort of like, oh, we do have some treasure ideas. Mm-hmm. And now we can pick them up, right? But you have to sort of have the hygiene to go back and look at it. Otherwise, it will become lost.
What are some of the things that you think contribute to being able to, I mean, you mentioned hygiene, obviously. What are some of the tips for success to be able to actually go back and resurrect some of those things from the backlog?
I mean, I think having a clear owner of the backlog, right? Sometimes it's not always clear who the owner is. And then sometimes like the expectation is that whoever the project manager is, right, or the business analyst on a given engagement or initiative, they're the owner of the backlog, which is not always the case, because sometimes it needs to be the business decision maker who owns that backlog. So I think having more explicit conversations about the role of the backlog and who ultimately is the decision maker over it is really helpful. The other thing is establishing a set cadence, no matter what, that you're going to check back in on it, right? And it doesn't need to be like every 2 weeks or, you know, as like a similar like sprint, you know, cadence, but like, you know, every quarter, let's take a look back at what's on this list. Have we done any of these? Do any of these still make sense? Or can we just sort of like get rid of it? So I think like setting a recurring calendar meeting every quarter, for example, and having the meeting no matter what.
Right.
Because in my experience, and I know you and I have done this together, it's like you get into the, rhythm of every day and sort of all of the tasks that have to get done. And you're like, well, this isn't pressing. I'm not going to necessarily do any immediate action on this. But, those chickens always come home to roost. So,
yeah. And I think you mentioned earlier, it's not just prioritization, it's also scoping, right? You talked about like, is it truly in scope, or, have hours been spent during implementation going for, have we spent more time trying to get something too close to perfect that we've lost the time for other things, and just not been able to come back to it. And so then we have maybe something that's a little like over-engineered and it's missing its counterpart.
Yeah, I feel like that is a lesson I personally had to learn a lot, like early on in my technology consulting career. And I know that that's something that you do a lot. I'd be curious to like, what are your thoughts on how to navigate that, right? Because everybody wants the pie in the sky, but like, what are your tips? I'm curious for like helping people sort of right set what's necessary in the moment versus like, and also like, making sure that they feel heard and that like you are not going to forget about it, right? That they're acknowledged.
Yeah, I think it's funny too, because I talked about this with Dan on the last one, and it's having a definition of done, right, that I think is so important. And when we say done, we know that nothing is ever really done, right? But it's got to be, we've got to get to a point where it's functional for now. The one thing I feel like has been able to sort of change people's minds when they do get very like fixated, they want it to be, they want it to be perfect, they want it to have everything from day one, is sharing experiences where, again, going back to the term over-engineered, sharing experiences where we did, we went all the way down the rabbit hole and we built this thing and it didn't really get the reception that we expected, right? Because it's a lot to do with how people use it. And so I've found success in having people sort of use V1 and give feedback. Like, let's get the users in there. Let's get them actually trying this out in real time. They can give us feedback and the feedback can shape where we go next with this. It doesn't always make sense, and it certainly almost never makes sense to build something for every exception that could possibly happen. And I think our clients get the sort of idea that they'll only ever have one shot to do this, and they get very fixated on it being perfect from the start. Whereas I think especially when you're changing a process, a longstanding process, it's not always going to have all the same components. You don't want to just immediately replace everything. You want to see how people adapt to sort of the new way of doing things and allow that to sort of shape where you go with it. I feel like that's really been the only thing that's kind of gotten people to sort of move off of, let's have every single thing. I wanted to do everything, all of the things, in my experience.
Yeah, totally. And that makes a lot of sense. And like, I think as you were talking about that too, I think usually the business customers are coming to us with such a high need, or like they've been suffering in their process for so long that of course, like, this is their opportunity, or have maybe been waiting on budget for so long to do this or whatever, to try to get the most value out of it. Right. I think the other thing too with backlog grooming is it's always been interesting to navigate sort of the different customer categories and who's comfortable with more of an agile sprint style project management, where like circling back is a part of the rhythm, right? Whereas if they're more used to waterfall project implementations, then the circle back is not going to happen.
Right. Yeah. No, we have to do it all this time. This is it. Like, yeah. And then another thing that came up on, one of the other episodes is you get all the way to the end of it. And then that's when you find out that nobody understood what we were trying to do in the first place. And now you've built this whole rocket ship that goes nowhere. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that wasn't really what we wanted. Well, we've already done all of it. You know what I mean? And I think with a more agile method, you can pivot and you can purposefully chuck things in the backlog that no longer serve you.
Yeah. And I think that also, though, is, sort of the style of agile that you run, and whether or not you're sort of running a bastardized version, and whether or not you're actually like being really structured with it. Like, a lot of people think that like it is a lot of work, and people think that like, no, it's just meetings for the sake of meetings. But like, there is some magic that happens in just having the structure. Like, I often think about, like, I don't have kids, but I know folks who do, and I know you do too, that like creating structure and sort of rhythms in their day help them thrive more, right? And I think that is totally applicable, right, in the sense of the technology consulting projects too, and the usage and sort of and discipline around agile.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned the structure, because I work on a team, a very small team of adults, right? Like, we're all very seasoned professionals, and yet we meet every single day for DSU, and we don't overlap on any of our projects. It is literally just like a ritual that we do every day. We see each other's faces. We talk about the things that we worked on yesterday, the things we're going to work on today. We compare notes. Here's a thing I'm working on. I'm a little bit stuck. Can we talk about it? And it's just one of those things I feel like that helps like set us up for the day. And do we need it? Probably not, right? Not every single day, but does it help immensely? Yeah, absolutely.
That sort of goes back to what we were saying too. Like, just set a standing cadence to just check in on your parking lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's pivot to something silly. What's the most absurd thing you've seen just rot in the let's circle back pile?
The most absurd thing. I don't know. That's a hard question. Is there one that you have? Like, do you have an example of that?
Like, racking my brain, because I like to think about like I always like to ask, like, what's the craziest one? I guess let's call it something else. Let's say if there was something that you would ever go back and resurrect from a backlog, what would it be?
I don't know. Like, my inclination, mostly because I enjoy building teams, is to like go back to like internal SOPs and such. Like, in my experience consulting, and it's not really absurd or crazy, but like in my experience, right, like, we're so hyper focused, rightly, on client execution and delivery for the client, and we're also trying to create more efficient processes and not have to like reinvent the wheel every single time internally. But it can be hard to sort of balance both. And so I feel like there's often times where the internal SOP backlog that's really interesting to me, and I think most useful to the team, can sometimes go to die because of the demands for the client, which makes a lot of sense. And so it's not necessarily crazy, but there have been times where I feel like, why is this in the backlog? Like, I wish we desperately had time for this. And I was, as you asked that question, I was also trying to think through customer backlogs, right? And I think, and I know like you and I sort of have like a sixth sense on this on calls, but like, I think sometimes when I would put things in the parking lot or somebody asked something to be put in the backlog, I would just sort of try to immediately like push it from my mind.
Yeah.
Like, it's on the backlog, it's documented there, because otherwise then my mind sort of spins like, okay, well, we've got to talk to the sales team about expanding the scope, and then we've got to talk about budget, and then but we have an existing milestone timeline, and how the hell are those items fit on this timeline? And so I just like put it in the backlog box and shove it away. So like my brain is having a hard time sort of also like racking through examples in that way.
No, I like that. Yeah. No, I think what you said about SOPs is actually really on point, because we are in the services business and our work is the product, and we're always very focused on margins and making money, right? And so if we're not doing client work, it's not that it's discouraged, it's just never going to win over the client work, right? And so unfortunately, it's also the thing that makes us more effective and more efficient at the client work. Like, we would be better at doing this, but is there ever a moment where we can step away and take the time away from this to spend time on something that doesn't actually make money? And that is definitely the challenge. And I think that's something that everybody in services can probably relate to.
Sometimes I wish that we had our own consultants, right? Like the consultants sometimes to manage our backlog and keep us accountable, right?
Yeah. So what do you think is worse, pretending that it's still alive, or admitting that it's dead? Like, which would you rather do? Would you rather just keep pretending that we are going to get back to it, or would you rather just be like, that's never going to happen?
That's a good question. I think it depends on your team. I think it also depends on the client. But for me, I would rather just like, let's be realistic.
Yeah.
And acknowledge that it's not going to get done. But like, I also recognize that's a little bit of my personality coming out. Like, I am much more of a realist, and also, frankly, a glass half full kind of gal. Mm-hmm. I am trying to half empty. I'm pessimistic, so it means I'm half empty.
Half empty.
Half empty, right? I do want to be more of an optimistic person, and so I think more of the optimists are like, we'll get to it eventually. Right. But for me, it's like, no, we're not. Like, can we just like be real about it? Like, and
that's probably like, we're slacking each other. Like, that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and I also think like both approaches are kind of like, you need the other approach too. I feel like on one hand, if you're always saying like, we'll get to it eventually, you're never actually going to prioritize it.
Right.
Right. Whereas if you say we're not going to get to it, then some of the things that are actually a priority might rise to the top. Otherwise, they will disappear into the junk drawer.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So what's something that you're glad? Can you think of anything that you're glad went out to pasture? I'm trying to think of all the euphemisms for quietly dying.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there definitely been.
You don't have to call anyone out.
No, I know. That's the challenge.
That's
like, you gotta be like, ooh. Yeah. No, I think there have been some Salesforce clients that like we've actually worked on together, where they were literally trying to do the most complicated like sales process.
Yeah.
Under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally like wore themselves out. And I think we were actually doing a pretty effective job of being like, okay, let's focus on an MVP approach here. These features and functionality are totally capable, but like, let's get this in. And also you're going from having no Salesforce. Like, you don't need the Cadillac, like totally pimped out, right? Because you're going from nothing to something.
Mm-hmm. We're already making improvement.
Yeah. And so when I always get excited when a client gets a little bit more realistic and reasonable, and I think flexible, right, in trying it out and then iterating as we sort of talked about. So for me, I think the most recent examples I can think about are the like really complicated sales processes. They're like, no, you don't need this. Also, literally anytime, and now that we're talking about this, like anytime somebody is like, I don't actually need that customization, let me use the out of the box functionality.
Right. Yes.
Yes. Hallelujah. Right. This will literally save you so much money and time in the long run.
Yeah. I literally had that conversation this week with a client where I was like, what, do you know why we have a custom, they ask for a specific report and you can build that report really easy if you use the out of the box functionality. And I'm like, do you know why we have this customization? I'm like, because I can slap together like a kind of sort of decent version of this with the customization. I was like, but if we spend a little bit of time and get us back on the native feature, you're gonna have like a much better version of it. So those are the things I'm happy that die in the backlog.
Yeah, and I recently had a client too that made heavy customizations to a system, and then every time an update came out to the platform, they were having to do heavy regression testing, and their team was not built to support quarterly regression testing. And then, of course, things came up every time because they opted not to use the out-of-the-box functionality, and they are now considering abandoning all of those customizations and going back, right? And so that on one hand, I'm like, yes, do that, but also like, look behind you, look at all of that wasted backlog, right? Mm-hmm. Which unfortunately, this is not the first time and will not be the last time.
And I feel like you said it early on too, like, all clients are special, but also no clients are special, right? And that's one of the things I like to try to remind people gently too, right? Like, nobody else that I'm working with is doing or attempting to do what you're doing. You guys all have the same problems. Solutions can be unique, right? But you guys all have the same problem, and nobody is attempting to do this way, and they're all continuing to have success. So if it's one of the things, like, I've probably been, I'm not exaggerating, I've probably been in 1,000 Salesforce orgs at this point, right? And that's one of the things where, I think allows me to sort of like buy a little bit of trust as well, to be able to say, look, I've seen a lot of this stuff and nobody's doing this. I promise you don't need it. You think that you need it. And if I'm wrong and we determine that you do need it, I will build it for you. And like, let's just try it out without it, because I don't think that this is an essential part of what we're doing.
Yeah, totally. The other thing we haven't really talked about here is the backlog items that go to die because of the client.
Yeah.
So like things that they say week over week that they want, and then week over week they do nothing about.
Yeah.
That drives me insane. And we'll sometimes use let's circle back in those instances, but that is just like deep disappointment use of the term.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that we've seen a lot of too, is when there's just a project manager on one side, right? And I think there sometimes ends up being an expectation that you'll project manage both teams, which is not tenable. Like, you can't do that, because
we're happy to if you'll pay us to do that.
But it'll be another dedicated person. It will not be the same project manager.
Right.
We will provide you with 2 project managers, but it's a project on one side and it's a project on the other. If nobody is project managing on the client side, nobody's driving it forward, then absolutely those things do slip for sure. Because they're all doing work as well, right? Like, we're all here at work, right? And so like carving time out of work to do work on work is just not, it's just one of those things. It's too easy to set aside.
Yeah, it's like one of those, it's like the analogy with exercise. Like, you'll feel better after you exercise. Do you make the time to exercise? No, not always, right?
Are you calling me out?
No, I'm not calling you out. I was about to say myself, and I was like, we know that that's not true. We know I'm not skipping my exercise.
You can survive.
No, you can tell when I haven't exercised.
I just need to go for a run. I just need to go throw something in the gym.
But that's also why I'm the engagement manager, delivery director, right? Like, it's part of my personality.
All right.
When was the last time you exercised, Gabby?
I lift small children over my head multiple times a day. That's my
I
exercise.
know. You've got mom arms. I don't have mom arms. I don't think I could do that.
It's like run to wherever there are to stop them from doing whatever it is that they're doing in that moment.
You're doing some interval, high intensity interval training.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, honestly, like at the end of the day, I've made my steps.
Yeah.
How did I make my steps? It's probably a lot of pacing, a lot of moving the stroller around until they fall asleep. No.
Totally. No, but like people who work out don't have the same muscles as like.
Yeah, it's like different muscles.
Totally different.
Functional muscles and something else. I don't know.
You can be as fit in the gym and then you try to hold a 50-pound child on your hip for more than 10 minutes. Good luck.
Do you know
a newborn in the swaddle? Yeah, anyway.
My 9-month-old is as big as an 18-month-old. So
what are you feeding him?
Everything. He just wants to eat everything at all times. To eat everything. Protein shakes. Yeah, we give him a lot of protein shakes. Really?
Can you give to 9 months old? Okay, I was like, wait a second. I'm not a mom, but
no. He's just a big kid. He's a lot to carry around. So let's have a moment. I guess a moment of silence for all the things we'd circle back on. We said we'd circle back on. But I do want to talk about one thing that I love as part of this fake podcast is we do a tab of the week. Do you have a tab that you'd like to talk about?
A tab that I would like to talk about. No,
that's okay. I have another thing I can.
We can talk about it. I feel like I'm sort of all over the place, right? Like,
that's what's great about it.
So I think the tab of the week is I'm trying to build a personal brand website. Mm-hmm. And so I've been spending a lot of time on Squarespace, right? And I think I'm sort of like doing the thing that we all in technology say not to do is like, don't try to build the thing yourself, get somebody else to do it. But I'm curious and like want to know how to dabble in it. And so I've been spending a lot of time with multiple tabs open in Squarespace, trying to edit different things for that.
That's amazing.
The expectation that I'm supposed to show the tab?
Yes. However, you don't have to.
Okay.
You will need to let the audience know when you finally launch your personal brand, and I will share it with everyone.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. I appreciate the caveat to the rules because I'm usually a rule follower.
Yeah. So I think people will follow up on it, just so you know.
Okay.
Because only 15 people listen to those.
Well, here, I can sort of show you. This is sort of outside the wheelhouse of RevOps, but that's okay. Just give you a little sneak peek here. Are you able to see it?
I am.
Yeah. So I've been playing around with the different services aspect that I'll be, offering. And this is totally outside of RevOps. So this is like a side gig that I'm trying to work on to do health and wellness coaching. And so sort of mapping out, because that can be very nebulous.
I don't know that it's outside of RevOps. It sounds like this is going to invite some recurring revenue.
Oh, good point. Good point. Thank you for that. You were right. So are you available to build my marketing and sales pipeline?
Let's circle back on that.
Me with my funnel? Oh, okay. Which version of circle back is that? And then, having to navigate the UI, there's obviously the desktop version and the mobile version.
Oh, this is so nice.
Thank you. And the front page. So you're getting a very, very exclusive sneak peek of this. So
I really like the font choice.
thank you. It's a little I've been a little obsessive over it. Just sort of like what feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also trying to lean into, I think, less of a like very polished, very, sort of structured way.
It's got a little bit of like a sort of hippie vibe.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? I want it to feel fun. I want it to feel light, right? Because if somebody's seeking, health and wellness coaching, right? Like they probably got a lot of stuff that they're working through. And it is serious, but not that serious, there should be lightness to it. But anyway, like having to navigate this new like UI and also having to get my brain around like website stuff. So that's sort of been my obsession this week. And doing a lot of like chat GPT or Googling, the classic Google of like, how do I do this, right? For example, I bought my domain via a different website provider and I started building the website on that. And I didn't like the user interface. I didn't like how it felt. So I abandoned the design on that site and now had to navigate transferring that domain over to Squarespace as I built that too. So a lot of many open tabs for that.
But learning something new is always exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I recognize too, a really good friend of mine has been helping me with it. She's got a lot more design and website experience. And so every time I hit a wall, I've gone to her and been like, all right, what am I missing? Like, I need somebody else's eyes on this to like show me what I am not seeing here. And she's like, I love that you wanted to learn this, and I love that you're doing this. Once you get it into a state that you're going to make it live, don't ever touch it again. And hire a college student or an intern or somebody, who just does this off to the side to do any major redesign or overhauls in the future.
They'll have a definition of done.
Exactly. But I do have to admit, Gabby, I don't, and I'll show you a different tab, I don't have a good backlog. I did not practice what I preach, and I did not start with a website backlog for that. I just created a monday.com board, right? So here.
Oh my gosh, you're like, I didn't do a good job.
Yeah, but it's not.
I do have a board.
But it's not super extensive, right? So you're seeing this here, right? I'm also overdue. I don't have due dates here, right? Like, I feel like I'm the, what is it? Do what I say, not what I do. Yeah. So sort of outlining, okay, like I want to get it live this month is my goal. And so like, what else needs to be done in order to do that? And this is not the comprehensive list. And there are probably some things that I'll have to circle back on. For example, the footer. I will definitely have to circle back on because there are elements that go into the footer that like I'm not ready to do, right? For example, like footers usually have social media. I'm not ready to do social media. So I will circle back on that.
It is so funny to hear you talking about footers and social.
Why?
It's just like, it's just such a new thing for me with you.
I'm trying,
I love it. No, I think it's great. I'm super excited for you. I think this is awesome because I think it's something that you've wanted to do for a long time and something that's really important to you. And I think you have a lot to share with other people.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. And I really appreciate you calling out the RevOps overlap here. Sometimes I think that like RevOps is over there for like businesses, right? Really
you're gonna have subscriptions?
There are so many ways that like everyday people are building revenue for themselves in myriad ways that are not just working your 9-to-5 day job, right? And so I really love what you're doing here with the podcast to sort of also like demystify RevOps as a term, and also like sort of like, I know you talked, I think, with on one of your earlier podcasts about what it means and how does it exactly. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So I don't have a tab this week.
Okay.
But I'm wearing this shirt, and it's so funny we wore the same color.
Yeah,
I'm wearing
this the kitty cat
that I got at a dog wedding.
You went to a dog wedding, but why? Why is it a cat if it's a dog wedding?
Well, the wedding was actually a fundraiser for Barks in the city.
Awesome.
And of course, they do rescue both cats and dogs. I got a cat shirt, and my husband, who was my date to the dog wedding, also got a shirt. And I figured it was a good opportunity to put you on the spot even further and have you talk about what it is you're doing this weekend.
Oh, I see what you did. Okay. So tomorrow is actually my birthday, which is really exciting. And unbeknownst to me, nothing to do with my birthday, my family is going to Dewey Beach this weekend for what is called the Golden Jubilee. And it is a giant golden retriever meetup on the beach. They close a section of the beach down, and the dogs are allowed to sort of romp around. Otherwise, the dogs aren't usually allowed on the beach. And there is like a full schedule of events for the weekend. Like there's a Facebook group, right? Like, so I think there is a parade tonight through Dewey Beach of the dogs, right? And then tomorrow there's like actual like beach time. And then there's also a bonfire of the, dog parents and the dogs. So I've decided to join my family for the Golden Jubilee. And, I'm hoping tomorrow for my birthday that I just like get to lay in the sand and like be trampled by, hundreds of golden retrievers. But like, I think about that vision, like that fantasy, but then like the reality of that is not going to be.
Oh, no.
Like, I don't want to be trampled by wet, sandy dogs. And also they are not going to care about humans tomorrow. Like they're only going to care about the other dog.
Yeah. About wrestling.
And I did ask my dad, I was like, Dad, how are we going to tell which one's Huck? And he's like, oh, we're going to know. And I was like, are we? Like, because, and like, they do come in many shades, and like, obviously like you learn your animal's face, but I'm still
there's a sea of them. I
think about Ollie, my cat, right? Like Ollie looks a lot like Mike's cat, Kepler, right? And like, you put enough gray tabbies next to each other. Like, are you really going to be able to tell?
That is not going to come if you call him. The dog will probably come eventually.
Oh, that's a good point.
I have a new home now.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about calling the dog by its name. But I am curious to see what sort of bandanas they're all going to be wearing. I'm sure some of them will probably have costumes. My parents' dog is not a costume dog. He might have a bandana on, but we'll see. But yes, Dewey Beach's Golden Jubilee are my weekend plans for my birthday. It apparently happens twice a year, once in May, and I think once in
twice a year.
Yes, there is an official Facebook group. So for those listening who have golden retrievers or are interested in joining next time, go check it out.
Thank you for talking about that.
You're welcome. It is kind of wild. It is a weird thing to be like, what do you do this weekend?
Yeah.
Well, I just said like, I'm going to a Golden Jubilee.
Just golden retrievers as far as your eye can see.
I know. And apparently I didn't know this until my dad started really getting into it, but like dog owners of different breeds do this too. Like there are other breed meetups. Like you could go to a Chihuahua meetup.
No?
Well, first of all, Chihuahua meetup.
Yeah. They don't really like other Chihuahuas. They just like people. It would have to be one Chihuahua and like a large crowd of people that they could just get pettings from.
Yeah. And they also don't like all people. They just like their people.
That's true. Yeah.
So, and also, could you imagine the barking at a Chihuahua meetup?
So I actually don't need to imagine that because the lady that I got Rocco from, she had that situation happening at her home. She lived on like a farm, like a big, like lots of space. We're not talking about like they were all in a little apartment or anything. But yeah, when you approached, it was it was like just this magical sort of convergence of little teeny tiny dogs and and it probably doesn't, like, people listening are like, oh, I hate Chihuahuas, they're so yappy. I'm telling you, it was beautiful. They just all come like and run up to you and they're like so excited to see you. It's a good thing.
You are a Chihuahua person.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm. Yeah.
Well, what?
No, I mean, we had a big dog, obviously, for a while, and she definitely won my heart. So I think.
Yeah. You're not just a Chihuahua person. You are a dog person.
The duality of man. I'm a giant pit bull fan and tiny Chihuahua fan.
You don't think that there's more space in that Venn diagram for more dogs?
I like
types of dogs. Yeah, exactly. Like if somebody were to bring you a dog and say, Gabby, this is yours now, no matter what breed, you would not be like, no, thank you. Please take that dog away from me.
That's true. Yeah. I especially like the ones that like are real sort of unlovable looking, like the ones that have like weird patches of fur and like the tongue is hanging out and they got like one wonky eye. Yeah, those are the best ones.
Would you have a hairless Chihuahua? Would you have a hairless Chihuahua?
The Chinese, they were like the Chinese crested. That's yeah. Yeah, they're pretty cute.
What?
Yeah. That's endearing to me. I like that.
Okay, good to know. You like the misfits, the slightly odd looking of us.
Yeah, like why do you look like that? It's okay. I love you anyway. Yeah,
I love that.
So thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me. It's fun.
What were you like when I was like, I'm gonna have a fake podcast? What were you like? What is she doing now? Like, what was your first thought?
My first thought was like, it's not actually going to be a fake podcast. It is a real podcast. Like you've had many episodes now, like you're doing the thing. And so I'm like, she is just labeling it fake podcast to be able to like get moving with it and like keep it going.
Yeah.
So
what happened was I asked my husband, I was like, because he actually like listens to podcasts. And I was like, well, what do you need? What do you need to start a podcast? And he like started listing off like microphones and like lighting and like chairs and like a studio and like all of these things. And I just like looked at him and I was like, all right, well, I have a fake podcast then because I'm not gonna have
yeah. You're going with the MVP approach to your
exactly MVP.
Right
this is the one. Yeah.
This is MVP. And honestly, I really do love that it's called a fake podcast. And I love the title revops or whatever, like, because it can be whatever. And also like in the experience of working in the revops, space, it is literally like whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, every day is a different story.
Yeah. And it's more, and I love that you're exploring different topics and talking to different folks, right? Because at first I was like, why would you want to talk to me, right? But I think, I'm glad that you had me on and I really enjoyed it. I feel like everybody has a little different flavor, right, of RevOps to add into the conversation. So I'm super excited that you're doing this. Thanks for having me. This is really great.
Thank you for being here. Oh, we have to thank a fake sponsor.
Oh.
So, okay. This episode of RevOps or whatever has been brought to you by Deferred, the project management app that automatically moves your tasks to someday. Because if it were important, you'd be doing it already.
Beautiful. Love that.
So here's a circling back.
Start that app? Can we create that app?
Can we create that app? Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. You've got some skills now.
I could build a website.
Yeah. You build a website, I'll build the app.
Should we build a backlog for building the Deferred backlog app?
Yeah.
Let's circle back on it.
It's like you've told me to take my medicine. I don't want to do it.
Let's circle back on it. Okay.
All right. So here's a circulate back, except not really, because some things belong where we left them. But everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll circle back on this next week.
Bye.